Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Lucifer, the latest episode of Supergirl, as well as the latest episode of iZombie. Like always, if I'm talking about something you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I say about this week's episode of Lucifer, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Supergirl, and or skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of iZombie. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of Lucifer, a great episode. It is kind of interesting because they are like, you can tell, because it's interesting quickly learning that Chloe never really had much of a wedding when it came to her and Dan. It's like, oh, they went to the courthouse and then they immediately went back to work. Because like, oh, because it seemed like she was stressing about the wedding thing. It's because technically this is her first wedding and she has Ella, and Ella wants to plan it out because she, Chloe's the closest thing she has to a sister because she has all brothers. So it's kind of not something that's really in her wheelhouse at this point in time. So it's just, I appreciate that. I thought that's kind of nice. And Pierce is all about moving the wedding up as soon as possible. For him, it's like, no, I'm so sure. But you could tell from the beginning, even Chloe was like, I don't know. So all while that's happening, Chloe is taking time off. And in this episode, we had Lucifer and Dan working together. So good. Because for one, you never get to see them pair up a lot. It happens every once in a while, but not that often. But I really like the aspect of like Lucifer to understand Chloe a little bit more, understand why she chose Pierce. He tries to pretend to be her this episode. So even asking Dan is like, oh, how are things between you and Charlotte? He's like, oh man, other stuff. I mean, she's dealing with her own stuff, so I'm trying to keep my distance. Oh man, thanks for asking. Glad to know you care. He's like, oh, I don't. He's like, right. Chloe would care. He's like, now you're catching on. Because he's trying to be more empathetic, trying to play the role of Chloe because he thinks if he plays that role, he can get into her head more. Even at one point, even asking Dan to do it. I love the whole aspect of him summoning up the SWAT. That had to be kind of cool in its own way. Because for him, it's like, oh yeah, like I call, for backup. Because usually this is the time where I kind of go a little over my, over my head. And, the detective shows up, swoops in at the right time, and kind of has my back and kind of saves me. So he was trying to do the same thing. But I did appreciate them trying to, play those roles, even Dan kind of playing into the whole Lucifer angle, which kind of worked in some regards. It wasn't perfect, but Dan was kind of getting into the swing of it. And then like when it came to confronting the killer in the episode, he was waiting in his apartment like Lucifer normally would be. That was kind of neat. I was like, that was definitely a Lucifer move. What's also interesting too is when he talked to that lady Valerie, he ended up, Lucifer, when he tried to use his desire power on her, it didn't work. Which is like, I don't think that's ever happened before over the course of the series. It was such a small thing. It's not like it's a big deal. I mean, that just shows that she is 100% satisfied, I guess, because she gets everything she wants, which is interesting. I feel like as a human, naturally, you'd always want more. But I mean, I guess she's just at a peak of living her best life, so she didn't care about anything else. So it was just kind of interesting. Also, it's nice to know, too, that, his power does have a little range to it. I don't think he's ever used it extensively, because it wasn't working on Valerie, but it bounced and hit the person behind. I guess it's because maybe his power kind of tackles on the person in his eyesight who's it's like, oh, Valerie has no desires, but the lady that was behind her had all the desires. So I guess that's what it kind of his power kind of susses out who's in front of it. So I don't know, it's just kind of an interesting thing. Like I said, it's just never come up before, so I thought that was just kind of an interesting thing. It's kind of interesting though because of, I'm kind of skipping over it, but the whole plot of the case is the fact is that basically the killer is the victim, Francis. His husband Frederick was a killer because they had this dog and his dog was pregnant, and for him it's like, that dog took over my husband's life. I was neglected. I came second to the dog, kicked out of our own bedroom because it's like, oh no, the dog sleep with us. And for him, it's like finding out the dog was pregnant. It just would have meant 6 more reasons for his husband to neglect him. So it's kind of sad. It's just sad circumstances, and it's just he didn't mean to. They got into an argument and he accidentally killed his husband. So because it kind of ties into the whole episode which kind of ties into, wasn't that last week's episode too? The whole aspect of you couldn't say what was on your mind. For him, he just couldn't bring himself to tell Frederick how he really felt about the whole situation, which is something Dan kept telling Lucifer to do the entire episode. But it kind of leads into this kind of back and forth between them because it's Lucifer being kind of who he is, kind of takes a lot of stuff that should apply to himself and he kind of dishes it out because he basically says oh, Dan's afraid to confront Charlie. You're not really trying to give her space. You're just afraid of what she might say to you, which is interesting and ironic considering the fact is Lucifer's doing the exact same thing. And then after showing up to save Dan and trying to be Chloe, he finally understood because he's like, oh yeah, here you are being irresponsible, not being someone that I can count on, not being reliable. And hearing those words come from his mouth, and then he was like, I get it. That they're finally understanding why she chose Pierce. And she kind of talks about it herself because Pierce is a safe choice because he is reliable. Because Pierce has already shown that over the course of, like, obviously it's all part of his plan, but obviously Chloe doesn't know that. But, you know, if you look back on everything that Pierce has done related to Chloe, it seems like he's so sincere. He cares about her. He does whatever he can for her. Like when Lucifer wasn't there for her, he ended up taking a bullet for her. I mean, to be fair, that was more so his own situation because he ended up tipping to kill her off. Well, was that dude even the killer? I think that dude was. He ended up tipping him off so that he could get shot. I think it wasn't the person. Yeah, it was the center man at the time. So, well, the quote unquote center man, or was it someone else at the time? I don't remember. Nevertheless, whoever shot him, he did it all on purpose to test his, mortality and stuff like that. So. But from Chloe's perspective, it looks like, oh man, he's doing so much for me. So it is kind of sad that Lucifer learned that lesson, but he kind of throws it away at the end of the episode. I think it still would have been nice if he had told Chloe that, because I think even learning that lesson and seeing him learn that probably would have made her, probably feel better. It probably made her look at Lucifer potentially in a different light. I don't know. It's also interesting too because even though he was pretending to be Chloe, he actually did a good job kind of solving the case, working it like Chloe would. So that was kind of neat. But that's just one side of things. That's kind of like the boy side of the episode. You also had like Amenadiel talking to Cain, like, oh man, congratulations, dude. That was awesome. That was great. Oh man, like from one immortal turn into a mortal to another, and it's like, yeah, man, and it makes you realize just how crazy life can be. It's like, oh man, never knowing that some random act could be the end of you. This last kiss or last beer could be like basically that with being mortal, you could die at any moment, which is something Cain had never really thought about before. He's lived so long, so he's never had to worry about it. But now that he's mortal again, he's like, yeah, literally any random act in life could end up being the end of me. Motorcycle accident, just stepping in the wrong place. On the random chance you get struck by lightning. Obviously that was an example used, his motorcycle was, but still it kind of applies. And I thought that was kind of neat how Amenadiel was getting inside of his head and Cain was just kind of being shook by it too, all for the purpose of Amenadiel still thinking, oh, this is all part of his test. Because it's interesting because Charlotte made him realize like, well, the best way to do that is because like for Amenadiel to use weaknesses and insecurities that he has under his same circumstances, since they are in the same situation, and use that as kind of a weapon against Pierce. And he did, and we could tell it kind of shook him. Not necessarily the way you thought it would, because he thought maybe it'd push him to kind of second guess this whole wedding thing. Actually kind of made him push forward even more, because he was even telling Chloe at the end of the episode, oh, let's elope. So I thought that was kind of neat. But on the other side of things, while Amenadiel was doing that, Charlotte was kind of doing things on her own. I love that Ella was wanted to run the bachelorette party. And everyone was shocked when it turned out to be what it was. Because even Chloe's like, oh man, you got me a stripper, didn't you, Maze? And it turns into this like pretty and bright pink party. It's like, it's no strippers, no alcohol or anything like that. For one main reason, and that's because, Maze is trying to make sure things between Pierce and her go off without a hitch so that, their plan can come together. Because everyone was shocked, because it's like, it's Maze, so you expect strippers and debauchery, and it turns out not to be the case, and everyone was upset. They're like, where's the damn liquor in this place? And it's just like, everyone was just hurt by it. Because even Linda was like, okay, this isn't right, the way Maze is acting so prim and proper, and just not acting like a youth. And then, she kind of felt like there was something there to it. Obviously, she never figured it out, because in her mind, it's like, this is Maze we're talking about. Maze tortures people. It's like, obviously that's what this is all supposed to be about. I think Linda kind of projected maybe kind of a little bit of herself into it, kind of thinking Maze is kind of punishing them, or in general she's probably just thinking like, oh yeah, Maze is getting a kick out of this because like, oh, she knows that we're supposed to be having a party, so she's trying to make it kind of dull and boring and just kind of torture and mess with us. That's how Maze is getting her kicks off of this. Essentially, that's kind of what Linda's thought process was. And then you had Charlotte livening up the party by getting a polo team and a party bus, and everyone's living it up, getting drunk a little. I even love Charlotte putting doubts in her head, like, oh my, Los Angeles, California has like the largest or LA has the largest divorcing rate in the US. And like Chloe was like, what? And she's like, yeah. Oh, and you're also marrying someone else from your department too. It's like, oh yeah, that's so daring of you and stuff. Doing whatever she can. And Ella quickly picks it up because it's like, okay, what the hell are you doing? And then Maze is getting pissed at Linda. Linda's kind of drunk and getting pissed at her because it's like, this is me trying to hook up with someone else. And again, you're messing things up with so there's still that animosity between Maze and Linda. It didn't pop up too much in the episode, but, you know, under those circumstances, alcohol in her system and in particular, because Maze never actually drank anything. She was just trying to keep sober because for her, it's like, she wants this all to work out. Because I was wondering, because the fact of the matter is, it's like Pierce, she doesn't know that Pierce doesn't have his mark anymore. And then it pops up on his arm and it's like, oh, you sly bastard, you're faking that you still have your mark. It's like, it makes sense. Because he knows the moment he tells her, no matter what Pierce would want, she's going to want him dead so she can frame Lucifer and then get what she wants and get back to hell. So. But the moment she found out from Ella that the tattoo is fake, she got really pissed. But Chloe also learned something from this episode too, because like she talked to, I don't know the actress's name, but I think her character from Scrubs is Laverne. Basically made her, it's like, you know, it kind of put things in perspective. If you like, oh, she was married for 17 years and it's like, oh, he's the love of my life. So it kind of made her, because for her, it's like, she thought being with Pierce would fix something inside of her, like, that basically this being very because even she doesn't really understand why she said yes. Like even I was like, maybe she's trying to fill some hole in her. For her, it's like she's always, I guess, been this, you know, safe person, and she thought by, you know, taking this safe bet and being kind of spontaneous that it would awaken, you know, something in her, you know. Maybe you could, I don't know if she directly was trying to correlate this, but I guess it's kind of like what Lucifer does to her life. Yes, he makes things a little complicated, but he adds an element to her life that I think she enjoys in their partnership, that maybe she was trying to get that in her, like that same avenue of things in her like romantic life as well. I mean, that's how I'm interpreting it, but there's also something interesting too I forgot to talk about that I thought was kind of neat for Dan to kind of talk to Lucifer about. It's like, because Lucifer only addresses Chloe from her, because Lucifer wants to be with Chloe and stuff like that, but it's like, you don't really know much about Chloe. Like, you know about her as a detective. Like, her work isn't all there is to her. She is a mom, you know, also as well. Like, you know, just who she is on a personal level, that it isn't just her job. Her job is only a part of who she is. And there's many other hats and jobs that she takes care of, you know? So, because he goes like, you even call her the detective. You never call her by her actual name, Chloe, which is kind of an interesting thing to think about. But to him, he's like, oh no, it's just an endearing thing. It's like, I'm curious to see what that does. Would that actually do anything going forward? I mean, because like Lucifer doesn't connect with her personal life on any level anymore. I mean, obviously there'd be a lot of crossover between him, Trixie on some occasion. Obviously he keeps his distance sometimes because it's like kids. But it turns out and that hasn't really come up in a while. Some stuff times here and there, but it's not as prevalent. So I'm wondering going forward, would there be something we'd see him kind of like trying to get to see more and got to know Chloe, understand Chloe more on those different avenues of her life? I don't know. Like I said, he kind of cast aside everything he learned this episode. It's kind of like, oh, what's the moral of the story? It's like, well, I learned it, but circumstances now that you're not getting married kind of make it go, I don't need them anymore. So who cares? Which is kind of interesting. I find it fascinating because we do have the whole avenue of, because of that, it does seem like Pierce is a little pissed the way he's looking at Lucifer and Chloe, because I think it might be exactly what I kind of potentially thought was like, we might see kind of Pierce kind of go down the more villain route, because for him, it's like, oh, for the first time in his life, he could have what he wants, but he can't. And I think he's probably going to blame Lucifer. So it might be a situation where he might end up letting Maze do that, like frame him for like his, like, I don't know, because Maze is planning on doing it anyway. Because she's like, oh, you're trying to, he's like, oh, you don't want to kill me here because it's like, oh, Trixie's here. And he's like using a kid as a shield, which is very deplorable, but which is kind of also shows you where Pierce is too. The fact is that he would do something like that, because for him, it's like everything he's wanted for so long is right within his grasp. So he's not willing to just give it up. But it's interesting because I think that's also going to be the main motive to kind of drive him a little crazy, because it's like he's not going to let anyone like Lucifer stand his way. The point I was trying to make, I kind of went off on that little tangent there, is I think maybe he'll go let Maze do that so that Lucifer won't be with Chloe, because to him it's like Lucifer's competition. He already knew Lucifer was competition from the beginning. That's why he did it. It's because of Lucifer and Chloe's relationship. Because it's something I've brought up before too. It's like Chloe subsequently hasn't been in a relationship since Dan, you know? And because of that, Lucifer's never felt threatened in their partnership, like their relationship, obviously, you know? I mean, the fact of the matter is, I'm curious though, because it's, like I said, he could have told Chloe the entire episode how he felt. Yeah, you can make the argument that the timing sucked, but it could be what is necessary, you know? He's so worried about her being with Pierce and stuff like that, but it's like, you could have changed everything. But for him, it's like he felt like he missed his opportunity, so he felt like there was no point. But I'm curious, like, will he even bother doing it now, even though he has the opportunity, or will he just kind of let it pass because he is too scared, because he doesn't want the answer, because he's afraid that she's going to say no? But it's like, you don't know what's going to happen unless you take chances. I mean, because obviously for Pierce and Chloe, it is a situation of like their relationship is also over too, because it's like, well, once one person's willing to go forward and want to get married and the other person isn't, it kind of puts a little wrinkle in the relationship, because it's like, well, you always know one person wants more while another. I mean, for Chloe too, I think jumping into this relationship, it probably made her second guess a lot of the relationship too. So. But also, I just feel like, you know, once you take that step forward, once one person is willing to, like, and another person isn't, it's just like that relationship can never be stable, because, you know, you and that other person aren't on the same page, essentially, you know? So I'm curious to see what Pierce ultimately does. Well, I mean, the fact of the matter is he is the boss. So if he wanted to, I feel like he could be in a position to fire Lucifer if he wants to, just for whatever. So, like, I'm curious, like, will he try and sabotage things for Lucifer to do that, or what? And also, like I said, Maze she's got her plans. She's going to try and kill Pierce, but, you know, so he's always going to have, like, look over his shoulder, because she could come at any moment in time and take him down. But maybe, like I said, maybe Pierce will kind of use that to his advantage with this whole Lucifer thing. We'll have to wait and see. But we did also have Dan kind of learning from this experience too, where he actually tells Charlotte what he wants. Like, he finally, like, even though he was kind of getting on Lucifer about it, he realizes that much like Lucifer, he wasn't following his own advice either. So he takes the plunge with Charlotte. He's like, no matter what you're going through, I'm all in, which is like, yo, she's fine with being all in too. And I'm like, yay! It's kind of cool. So it's like, we can almost get there. If we could get Lucifer and Chloe together, it's like, but then it turns to that situation of like, well, maybe eventually Maze will be okay with a potential Linda and Amenadiel thing. But to be fair, Amenadiel's in his whole situation of like, no. I'm curious to see what he does now. I didn't even think about that, because he thinks this is all part of the test, and it's like, oh, he passed this part. Well, the other part will probably be trying to get Chloe and Lucifer to actually be together. So that's probably another part of his test. But I'm sure he'll probably think like, oh yeah, I'm getting so close to it. Like I said, it's so ironic, because like Linda called Lucifer out for the whole aspect of like, oh yeah, you using this whole excuse, like, we don't know what your dad actually has planned, or what's really him and what's just you assuming it's him. It's the same thing for Amenadiel. It's like, he doesn't know what's a test and what's really a test, and what's just him kind of projecting upon these certain situations. Also, an interesting thing I didn't think about until I saw them in the scene together, Linda and Charlotte, neither one still knows about the other, that the other knows about the Celestial, because it's never, I don't think they've broken it. I mean, they might have, it might be one of those other things. It's like, oh, it happened in between episodes or something, but I don't know if Linda knows that Charlotte knows. Like, I know they were talking about telling her, but I don't know if she knows. And Charlotte probably doesn't know that Linda knows about things. So it's going to be interesting when that comes out, and it's like, wait, you know about it? Yeah, I know about it, but how do you know about it? So that's going to be an interesting thing. So, like I said, overall, a great episode. I'm very interested to see what goes down in the next episode. And now moving on to this week's episode of Supergirl, a great episode. This episode brings up the dilemma that I pretty much figured was going to come up, is the whole divide between how they handle the whole pestilence situation. Amber's all about like, no, let's kill her. Well, Supergirl is like, no, we don't do that. We don't just kill people, no matter what the situation is. But for Amber, it's like, I'm doing this because of so many people are going to die from the blight. And she kind of turns things around on Kara too, because it's like the fact of the matter is Pestilence is still alive means your way of doing things doesn't work out, that you fail. So it's like, let me do things my way. It's not like I want to kill her, but I have to if it means saving so many people's lives. But it's kind of interesting about Pestilence whole thing. I mean, it's no surprise spreading disease, but it's kind of interesting how it was kind of spread. Because I was so certain it was going to be that Adelaide girl. Turns out not to be the case. She ends up being a victim. I was like, oh man, that sucks. But I was actually surprised for it to turn out to be Grace. Because she had that moment where she was kind of a little snippy with Win. But then she was like, oh yeah, I trust you. I was like, oh, is that supposed to be a little flirty between her and Alex? Because even Alex is like, she's not mean, she's just serious. I was like, oh, I thought that's what they were possibly hinting at. I was like, oh, maybe they kind of run into each other later on. I was like, so who could it be? After it wasn't Adelaide, I was like, it has to be the doctor then. Which is interesting considering she is a doctor and she ends up being Pestilence. Which is kind of what shocked me was the fact is it seems like unlike the others, she completely gave in immediately. So I think it must have been just something with Grace's personality to begin with, because everyone else fought it. Purity's human, she fought it, and obviously Sam kept fighting Rain. So, but I guess each one kind of like, because in Sam's case, she has Ruby to kind of keep her grounded, keep her fighting, whether, subconsciously, whether she realized it or not. And they were kind of able to kind of get to Purity a little bit. They were kind of on their ways, but Pestilence, it's like, no, she'd given in completely, because for her, she was tired of like, oh, like there's no good reward for being good. So it seemed like because it almost seemed like, even as Grace, she just had this warped mentality of like being good meant I'd get something in the end, but who cares? There's no good reward for being good in the end. It's like, who cares? Because it seemed almost like she had like this vigilante thing going on, like, oh, she's going after bad people specifically, but you look at all the other people she hurt, it's like, well, you didn't necessarily, you kind of hurt anyone that was in your path, but maybe it was more like because the infection hadn't spread like through the area, it was through contact, through like the scratches she left on people. So it seemed like she had it's so interesting because she like calls all these people evil for what they do. They turn away helping people. So is that your main motivation? I guess to be fair, they almost seem like they're this group of righteousness, because for them it's like, oh, like this world isn't good enough. We need to wipe out this world and kind of start over. We're winning over this world as gods. We'll be the ones to shape this world to a good place. I guess each one kind of represents this triangle of like the perfect world, where you have Purity kind of representing one side, Rain being another, and Pestilence being another kind of, I guess, together. I mean, because that's what it almost seemed like, because even Rain at the beginning was kind of like, oh, making it seem like she was getting justice, because what was she doing? The first thing she did was kill a whole bunch of criminals. So they're all about cleansing the world. They are kind of like that very like extreme side of like good / bad guys. They're anti-heroes to the extreme. They're villains that have that mentality of like, oh, we're actually the heroes in our story, that we're wiping out all the evil in this world. Even though you're killing a lot of innocent people along the way, it's like this world has to be cleansed. Then we can start anew. It's kind of what the mentality, it seems like that's what going on. So I guess, like I said, maybe Grace wasn't always like this. Maybe she was. Maybe that's what made it easier for her to kind of submit to her powers or not. So, and because I was wondering about that, but it does seem like, because obviously it's not airborne at first, but even Kara can be affected by Pestilence, and probably, given enough time, we know it grows into the Blight, but even Kara won't be, completely immune from it. Emra, Brainy, well, Brainy's a machine, so would it even affect him? But definitely, Emra and Mon-El are not affected because they have the cure in their system, so it's not going to work on them. But kind of flipping that around and kind of focusing on the other aspect of the episode, going back to what I was kind of bringing up, is the whole mentality. Mon-El was kind of on Kara's side, because it's like, we literally built the Legion around, like, Kara's model of like, do your best to help people, not to kill people. It's like, that's not who we are. But for Emma, like, obviously from the very beginning, you can tell it was like personal reason. Like, she lost someone to the Blight. Because even Mon-El's like, the fact of the matter is you made this personal. And she's like, no, it's not. The fact of the matter is I can compartmentalize, essentially. I can distinguish between like doing something for the right reasons and my own feelings, kind of snapping at Mon-El in that sense. But Mon-El's like, you're the one that brought me here. I'm not the one that asked to be brought here. So it's like, you can't keep blaming me for like the complicated situation between him, Imra, and Kara. Just his, like, his feelings kind of getting in the way of how things should be handled. But even if it wasn't for Kara, we still wouldn't handle things this way. And I guess it's also because Mon-El's coming from the perspective of who he was before, who Kara, her example made him into who he is now. And it's like, I don't want to ever go. And it's like, if he feels like if he goes down that path, he'll probably backslide and he could easily go back to being the person he was instead of the hero that he is now. I think is one way of looking at it, because crossing that line, once you do it, even no matter what the circumstances may be, you'll always find justification for doing it later on. And it's something that John touches on when he talks to Kara. It's like, yeah, situations are hard, but just because something's hard doesn't mean it is impossible. Like I said, we've seen that the human sides of both Purity and Rain are still there, but it just seems like Grace isn't all into being saved. But maybe that is just because Pestilence got the better of him. Who knows? But it turns out the person that was affected was her sister, which makes sense. I mean, she even brings it up, but when she looks at Kara standing over Alex, who is sick, you see it kind of like her tear up. So she lost her sister because of the blight. So it's motivation for her to do what she's doing, even more so. But even when she had the chance, she couldn't kill a Pestilence. But she even agrees at the end, like, she shouldn't have tried to ask Kara to change. The fact of the matter is, Kara shouldn't have to worry about something like that, because being who she is what's remarkable. Being the way she is what makes Kara special, There's also that sweet moment between Wynn and Jimmy I like, because, like, it's like, oh, he didn't realize, like, for Wynn, it's like he didn't realize how much baggage was associated with his mom. The fact of the matter is, like, how much that affected his life overall, how much that was kind of holding him back. But now that he's reconnected with his mom and things are good, it put him in that mindset of wanting more from life. And he's lucky and glad that he's built true friendships, obviously with Jimmy, and more like this life that he's built for himself. And he's just like, I don't want to die, like all this stuff I can do, So it was just kind of a nice, like, heart-to-heart moment he had with Jimmy that I thought was kind of nice. But I thought was kind of interesting too is the conversation between Brainy, which obviously I like the fact is that Brainy, obviously it's Brainy's actor just without the makeup, so that's got to be nice for him. I'm sure obviously it's a set, so you're still wearing makeup even if it doesn't seem like it is. But obviously you're not wearing the blue makeup, so you can enjoy. I love them when messing with him. It's like, oh, it's this dude with this claw, and it's like, he's like, really? Oh man, this is a good description. We got to go after this guy. It's like, yeah, he's talking about Freddy Krueger. So you know this guy. It's like, it's a movie. It's like, facetiousness, which I cannot say that word. Facetiousness is like something he can't get, so I thought that was kind of a nice touch. But getting to what I was bringing up is the fact is like, why didn't you tell me, Brainy? Because it's like they ran simulations based on how they've kind of based on that 7 years he's been with them. They made a decision, like they knew he'd be either say no, or at the very least it put them in a situation where he could potentially say no, so they didn't say anything to him about their mission and stuff like that. It's like, oh, if we take out Pestilence, we can ensure there's a 98% chance that the blight will be taken out, but if there's like a 52% chance that we could actually save Grace. Before Mon-El, it's like there are some choices that can't just be broken down to a mathematical equation, because once again, it's a situation, and that's something that's come up before, like the human heart is incalculable. It's something that you cannot account for. And it's like, I was starting to think, like, what was I talking about specifically? Oh yeah, the Flash, the whole thinker situation. There's some things you like, because it's easy to like try and calculate that, or whether or not you should your number, which is kind of sad to kind of put it in that perspective. But it's like, oh, one life for millions or billions. But at the same time, it's like putting it in, it's like, oh, 90%, oh, that means we should kill this lady, versus 50% that she can be saved. It's like, those are easy to put that in number, but that's not putting into words what you're doing. You're killing a person who isn't 100% in control, so who isn't 100% in control. So it's not a choice that should be just based on a calculation, because the fact of the matter is that doesn't calculate what, like I said, what that leaves you with once you cross that road. Once you do, there is no going back from that. But also, I think it's kind of neat and it's something in Monel's case too, because it's like no matter what the simulations or what the calculation said, Monel had a right to know what they had planned. The fact is that you hid that from him is messed up, because at the very least you owed him the choice. Whether he would have agreed or not, sure, I know it would have interfered with your plan, but he still had the right to know. He had the right to make the choice himself. If you don't give without choice, you know, it kind of defeats the purpose, you know? So like I said, I just think that's kind of a nice element to it. And the other side of things is the things with Lena and Sam, is we end up learning more about the whole transformation, that it is one specific enzyme that transforms them, but also learn that they all have this like this other parallel dimension that their like consciousness is sent to. So anytime she's Rain, like her consciousness went to that valley, that dark valley, and anytime she was Sam, Rain would go there. Rain's kind of been locked up there most of Sam's life. I wonder, does it look the exact same way for Purity and Pestilence as well, or do they kind of have their own different like valleys as well? Will we ever get to see them? Maybe not. Because the thing is, like I said, it's in parallel to, you know, Karazo's situation. Like at the beginning of the season, she's in that field, and even, was it last episode? They kind of switched it around. It started off in the field, and then it went into the dark valley, where it's kind of like a dark, like, it's like the coin, the other coin side of, like, you know, Karazo's situation. So is that what that's supposed to represent too? The whole thing at the beginning where she saw her mom and Monel? I don't know. It's just kind of interesting to think about. Which means that does speak that the fact of the matter is the other two, Purity and Pestilence, their human hosts are somewhere locked. Their consciousnesses are locked away there. But what I also thought was kind of interesting too is that Jimmy called Lena, and Lena kind of lied, because Jimmy's like, oh, you know, Wynn and Alex are sick, but then she's like, no, I'm working on it. Which I guess to a certain extent, like, because she didn't know about this being related to Pestilence, of course not, but she lied about it because because she was so focused on Sam. Because there's no way she would have known about Pestilence being the reason why this was all happening. It had to be a situation of she was so focused on saving Sam that it's like, well, whatever else is happening, it's got to take a back burner to this, which is kind of sad. But I mean, maybe in a sense it kind of makes sense too, because if she was able to save Sam, she'd be able to save and stop the other world killers as well, so it would have had its benefits. But even Sam was like, okay, maybe we should get help. But Lena, whether it's a combination of pride as well as just natural fear, because she presents it as like, if I tell like even Supergirl or Alex, they'll treat you like a criminal, lock you up and experiment on you. It's like, I can be the only one that does it. It's like, that's very egotistical of you to think like that. Like, no, I'm the only one that can save you. I'm the only one that can help. It's like, part of me, because it brings up the question of like, well, then are you really doing this for her sake? Because if you were, you know Supergirl, you trust Supergirl. But I guess also it kind of makes sense, because in her case, it's like, no matter what the circumstances are, it's like in Rain's case, it's like, well, Rain's the one that almost killed her, so it's like Supergirl will most likely not be. But it's like, no, it's just ironic considering she's thinking like that when it's like Kara is literally having to defend herself in that situation, you know, in that argument against Imra about the whole like wanting to make sure that they live instead of letting them die thing. So sadly it came down to it. I was not expecting it to be under these circumstances that she found out the truth, but it's like, oh, like now Kara finds out that Sam is Rain, and now, you know, it's definitely going to complicate things between her and Lena. It's like, you didn't tell me, you know, but whether it's going to be from Kara or whether it's going to be from Supergirl. I mean, technically, you know, obviously unbeknownst to Lena, it's going to be both, but it's like, you hid this from me. You should have told me. Like, Sam is my friend too. I wanted to know. I could have helped, you know. But, you know, like I said, it almost seems like Lena was kind of so caught up in this, like, no, I'll be the one to do it. You know, it's like, you know, maybe that Luther side of her kind of kicked in. It's like, no. If it's a problem I can't solve, no one can solve it. I have to be the one to solve it. But like I said, she has her justifications and they make sense. But it's like, Sam was literally like, we could go to Alex or we could go to, you know, Supergirl. They could help with this whole situation. But sadly, things are where they are now. And it seems like, at least for now, Rain is in control, because the moment all three of them reunited, they become that much stronger, because that's what saved Pestilence from dying, was Purity showing up, which maybe kind of in the long run kind of helped Imra because it kind of prevented her from crossing that line. And it also gave them what they needed to kind of make sure they could cure everyone. But it is interesting because I'm curious to see what happens now, because all three of them are together. The world killers are going to move in formation and do what they came here to do, destroy this world, you know? So it's going to be interesting to see it kind of all come together. So I'm curious to see what the next episode has in store as we kind of continue this. I mean, how do you defeat three opponents like them? It doesn't seem like it's possible now, especially now that they're together and even stronger. How do you deal with this situation? We'll kind of have to wait and see how everything plays out in the next episode. Because of that whole parallel dimension thing, look, it's not like the other sides of them are completely gone. They are hidden away. Probably combined with what Lena knows, they can kind of find a more plan of attack from this point on how to deal with the world killers. I mean, plus, like, you know, figuring out the enzyme, because it also seems like Lena was steps closer, but would that apply to the other two? You know, is the enzyme the exact same, or does it work a little differently? Is there a, like, I'm sure they're going to have to construct a way to destroy that enzyme while making sure that they keep, because I'm pretty sure it's probably a situation of you got to make sure you destroy the enzyme at the right moment too, because it might be a situation if you destroy it at the wrong moment, like for Sam, for example, if you destroy it while she's in Rain, she'll stay Rain and Sam will be lost forever. Or, you know, who's to say, you know, what kind of, you know, complications could come about destroying this, like, enzyme without being super careful, you know? Also, there is a whole situation of Rain threatening to kill Ruby, because Ruby is what Sam holds on to so much. And it's kind of interesting because it's like Rain feeds off the dark side of Sam, like a lot of her doubts and fears, because it's like, oh, like, your life has kind of been on hold. You just kind of been suffocated because your life has been like that ever since you had Ruby. Once again, I am curious, like, does that mean there's anything special about Ruby? I mean, because Ruby, not only on a personal level, because they're, you know, being Sam's daughter, there might be something in her system that might be able to help fight Rain, you know? So, but Rain will try and kill her, because she's the reason why she's the biggest reason why Sam is able to fight back so much. So, to kind of rid herself of that once for all, I think that's going to be something we'll probably see tackled in the next episode potentially. But like I said, we'll have to wait and see. And now moving on to this week's episode of iZombie, a great episode. A lot of interesting things that went down in this episode. Obviously, a big focus of this episode is Isabel staying in town. It's like, you know, Liv and Dayton are trying to decide like what they want to do with her. It's like, oh, you could go back home, but for her, it's like, I'm going to die anyway. Why kind of let, you know, it's like, she knows she wants to sit back and just, it's like, I'm already here, and she'd rather just die here on her own terms rather than go back home. She won't want to make her mom be forced to go through all this trip, like come all the way here just to watch her die. So, which plays into the episode because it kind of caught me by surprise was the fact is that Ravi, upon meeting Isabel, kind of is immediately like, oh man, she's cool, but kind of learns about her having the disease, like after they got talking, because it's kind of actually morbid, actually. The fact that she was hanging out in the morgue thing with the trays that they slide in and out of those freezers or fridges where they keep the bodies, and it's because she knows she's going to die, so she has a very, you know, it's like, it's a sad outlook, you know, it's just kind of like, oh, you're already planning that out, and she kind of almost does it like half-heartedly, like, you know, it's like she's serious, but at the same time she's a little jokey with it. She's like, oh, well, my reason for doing it are kind of weird, so, but Robbie's like, oh, scratch her, which Liv admits, like, I can't, I tried. You know, because even Robbie was like, okay, if you can't, then I will. Like, don't worry. I know it's a punishment and everything, but it's like, nope. So it's like, so then it becomes a situation. It's something I brought up last week's episode too. What if it's something similar to like, was it this or was that something else I was bringing up? The comparison to like Killjoys, where Davin had his whole situation, his whole immunity thing. So basically, Robbie and starts coming up to the same conclusion, him and Liv, like maybe some of the experimental medicines that she was on created like this immunity in her, because she could be potentially the one that, like I said, it's something that's like obvious because it usually comes up in zombie stuff, but a lot of zombie stuff recently, like The Walking Dead, it's like, oh, a cure. It's like, it's not even there. It's a possibility, but like right now, it was kind of a thought back in the day, like in earlier seasons, but it's like, well, no, that's totally gone now. But like now, like it just never would have crossed my mind to think of there being like someone who's just naturally immune for whatever reason. Like I said, maybe it's something in her system, that just doesn't click with. I was thinking maybe it was her illness, but it must be specifically some of the experimental drugs in her system that kind of make it so that zombie. Because even Robbie was like, yeah, it's impossible. Like I said, it's never come up in the show before, which makes her situation that spectacular, so. But it also comes out to the situation of what do we do with her? Like, Robbie wants to experiment on her to understand things, but obviously Liv is like, no, we're sending her back home. Peyton's like, no, we're sending her back home. But she's like, it's my decision to decide what I want to do. Because for her, it's like, I got a short amount of time. I want to make the best of it. And it's like, wait, so how did you get to Seattle? And this is where Robbie finds out about Liv being the new renegade. And he's like, you what? Because for him, it's a situation of, because like I said, I figured as much as like the reason why she didn't want to tell Robbie is because she didn't want him worried. Because at the same time, it's like, if anything happens, he can be like, all of them could be found culpable with this whole situation. Like, because they were assisting or friends with a well-known, what would be the word to describe her? I'm sure the T word could be used to kind of describe her, in some cases, but, they suffered the ramifications for it too. So it does come down to that. So I also appreciate the fact that we are getting kind of like a recurring character like Isabel. I'm kind of interested to kind of see, maybe kind of get a view of those series through her eyes. Also figure out like what her whole situation is, especially because Robbie lost the cures, which is interesting because I'm skipping around, but it ties into Blaine's whole story idea because for him, it's like, oh, I want to, I have these limited cures. But the moment Robbie finds out, like, makes a possible cure from her, that basically undoes everything that Blaine wants to do. Because basically he's selling 10 of the cures, which he has 14 now because he used one on the mayor. Kind of proof of concept of like, look, I have the cures, I'm selling 10 of them, which is like, why keep the spare 4? I guess just in case of, which I guess like sell them out. And then when you have those last 4, they go for even more money, I would assume. Because basically for him, it's like when the world actually goes back to being normal, he can basically use this as an opportunity. He can buy up all of these like properties that are super expensive, but they're being cheap because they've been like their value is very much under what they're really worth because of the whole zombie situation in Seattle. Buys up all that property, and when things go back to normal, whatever normal is eventually, then he can make a killing by selling all those properties and make a buttload of money. It's kind of his whole plan. But with Isabel's situation, and this could be what they're setting up, once it gets out there, once he finds out Robbie's potentially creating a cure, that could mean like, oh, he wants her dead because she's a way of destroying what he's trying to build. It could be a situation where Chase might look at it the same way too, because for Chase, it's like he's all about zombie survival. And if there's a means of wiping out the zombie species, even if it means curing him and others, like there's going to be plenty of people who are not going to be too keen on the idea of being cured. People might see her as a threat there too, but definitely the Blaine stuff. I don't know. Maybe Fillmore Graves / Chase won't exactly, but we'd have to wait and see on that front, because the reason why Chase is going through all this so much is to protect the zombie populace. But if they do create a cure, like zombies will be wiped out, and that, like I said, that's a conversation that keeps coming up in my head. Is like, where will zombies stand when this is all said and done? Will like all zombies be cured? Will they be kind of wiped out? Like, it's hard to say at this point in time. Like where the series is going to ultimately end when it comes to this whole zombieism thing. It is also crazy to me to think that the fact is the mayor is dead. After like his whole story last season, it's just kind of crazy to me to think that he is dead. Also means that Peyton is acting mayor now, and that's really interesting. That's probably going to turn into a whole election situation too. I'm curious to see who's going to decide to run. I mean, they had a zombie as mayor. It might be a human who tries to. I mean, to be fair, Peyton's a human now too, but they might try and force her to be in a situation where it's like, well, you're a human. You should be looking out for humans instead of zombies. They might try to get a human in office so that they can change up this whole policy when it comes to zombies. At least with the zombie in office, it kind of like, kept things kind of balanced, but a human, depending on who the human is, could shift things and make it so like, oh, zombies are in the disadvantage rather than kind of being on equal terms with humans. Who knows? I did like in this episode that Liv did eat a brain, and that brain is rapper Dirty Rain. And you also see her kind of like the way she's dressed, the way she's acting, and like the way she kind of raps and stuff. I was like, that's so dope, dude. That's so cool. I always love it too when the brains end up being in cases where it's like it's not a big focus of the episode, because I mean this particular brain she ate, as well as like his zombie girlfriend, were all connected to the fact is that it was connected to the serial killer that got away in last week's episode off that bus. I didn't realize that's what that was. That bus was filled with killers. Also, interestingly enough, to be fair, he wasn't on, because I'm surprised Peyton didn't put 2 and 2 together about the whole situation with the guy she got the money from that she used to fund Renegade's operation. Like, the fact of the matter is that hadn't come up that, like, oh, that dude was on that bus. But maybe his body parts were probably found, so they probably didn't think much of it. Because I guess in Peyton's mind, maybe she won't. I mean, I guess unless a certain person really like eats it, they won't really know. Like I said, it was in Blaine's brain. So if he eats it, like I said, eventually it'll probably take a little while, depending on if the brain's still in his system or not. But I don't know, maybe it'll be a situation that he doesn't find out that Peyton has it. I don't know, because it didn't come up this episode or anything. So the brain might have already worked its way out of his system, so. But I didn't realize that bus was full of so many, like, extremely bad people. Even Ronnie's a bad guy because he's known as Ronnie. What was his name again? Like, he's known for being like a zombie killer. Like, he's killed like 9 zombies. These made like his 10th and 11th victim. It's because he ended up killing them because it's like, oh, the dude, because Dirty Rain is a zombie lover, essentially. It turns out his first victims were actually his wife and child, because it's, oh, they were already dead. So he's one of those, like, you're a zombie is just like, oh, you're the same thing as dead. Doesn't recognize zombies as being the undead that they are, another class of living people, essentially, so. It actually took me by surprise him going after Chase directly in this episode. Which that kind of turns into a whole conversation in itself, because Chase finds out this episode about the whole situation with Angus and his church. And he's like, why didn't I know about it? And I was like, Major didn't tell us. Like, nope, Major told him, but he wrote it all in his report, but he didn't get it. Which kind of feeds into the aspect that Chase is like, I can't trust anybody. Hence why he was kind of searching his room, his office at one time. And Major's like, are you looking for something? So it seems like even the people closest to him, that, people underneath him, he doesn't trust anyone. The only person he can trust now is Major. Because it's sad, because the whole situation about Chase, because Chase is being, you see it more and more with each episode, him kind of losing grips, because it's like he's trying his best, but this is a lot for one person to handle, especially because you feel like everyone's literally conspiring against you. That was literally a big part of last season, was literally everyone conspiring against him, and now he still feels that. Now there's the pressure of, because Chase and them and Fillmore Grace didn't ask for the situation that they're in. The Traitors last season are the ones that kind of made things where they are and made the things so complicated. And now he has to be the one that kind of picks up and fixes the mess that they created, so try to make the best, find a silver lining to the situation, which is not the easiest thing, which obviously leaves him very stressed out. But it's interesting because he even has Major scratching Ronnie. It's a combination of punishing him, because I guess it's like because I guess he won't be tried the same way if he kills zombies. Yeah, some of his victims may have been human, but still, like, killing a zombie isn't the same thing as killing a human. Even in his mind, it's like, no. If I'm killing a zombie, I'm killing something that's already dead. They're dead. So how can I be tried for killing something that's dead? But in his mind, it's like, but you, Chase, you killed so many human beings because of those whole situation. Once again, that whole situation was out of his control. That was not him, but obviously because he's the last one standing with this whole situation. I mean, wasn't her name Carrie Gold, the one that kind of led the whole thing last season? Even she kind of admitted that there would be others after her. So there's probably still people in this organization feeling like Chase isn't doing the best he can. So they're undermining him so that things could fall apart. And so that basically they can have the justification to kick Chase out of like his position. So. But the fact is that he asked Major to scratch him just so they could take the dude to the guillotine, like making him a zombie just so you can punish him in that regard. Is it because that's the right thing to do in the eye of the law, which I doubt that is, or is that more so because he shot you in your knees and you just want to payback against him for all that he's done against zombies too? kind of make him die as a thing that he hates so much. Like, is it supposed to be poetic justice in some sense? Because even under these circumstances, you can definitely tell Major didn't like it. Because obviously him and Liv came to, well, not blows, but verbal blows, because she's still pissed about the whole, like, Mama Leone situation. And it's not like he was okay with it, but it's like, yo, Mama Leone doing what she did, like, I'm saving a lot more lives this way. It's like, it kind of, like I said, you see both sides of it, because it is, the more zombies that are created, the more of a divide it causes between the humans and zombies, because zombies don't have enough brains to go around, and so that means less food for people, more problems, and the more problems that rise up, the more people turn against zombies. So they're saving more lives in that regard, but all the people that could be saved by turning them into zombies, which is what Mama Leone was trying to do. That's the whole point of the renegade situation, is what Liz is trying. I said Liz. Liv is trying to do. I hope I haven't been calling her Liz the entire time, because that's going to mess me up so much. Because there's Olivia, and then there's Liz from the Blacklist, Elizabeth, and then there's Elizabeth from Instinct, who goes by Lizzie. So it's just, I'm going to mess up all over the place, I'm sure. But hopefully I've been calling her Liv the entire time. Beside the point. So I'm curious to see where Major stands when it's all said and done. Because, like, Peyton was like, you two love each other. You've been through so much. You'll find a way past this. But it's like, it's such a big, like I said, it's a divide that's literally breaking apart. Not just the city, but also the world is very divided on this. So it's like, definitely the city is. And it's just kind of like, I don't know if when it's all said and done, like, because Major isn't okay with this, but he's under the circumstances of he chose a side, so he has to stick with it. But also at the same time, I think he somewhat believes in what Chase is doing, but maybe given enough time, especially because the way they're setting it up, like, oh, he's the only person Chase can trust. But I think given enough time, we might see Major kind of shift sides. He might start working with Renegade, not, eventually down the road, or maybe when he finds out that Liv is Renegade, he won't let Chase kill her, which I feel like might be where that's all headed, but who knows? We'll ultimately kind of have to wait and see, but I think eventually we'll see Chase kind of spiraling a little bit, and maybe that'll kind of make Major question his loyalties. You also had, like, the two that serve underneath him kind of having a similar situation to him and Liv. It's like they kind of have this relationship, but the dude's kind of like, yo, what's up with that? She's like, I never said we were just going to be like a thing, but he kind of did. And now she never really gave him an answer. So maybe that's something. It seemed like that was kind of like a personal thing. Like, oh, she might have went into it, but she never really went into why she isn't into the whole relationship thing. It seems like there's more to it than that, but we'll kind of have to wait and see. Because we do have the whole situation with the mayor dying, it could be a situation of they could potentially, I guess, find. I mean, I'm curious, like, given the situation of him being a zombie, would the cure do anything to his brain? Has there ever been a cured person brain ever being eaten? Like, would that do anything to the brain? Has that come up before? Because I guess Liv could eat his brain to kind of find things out, but still, it'd have to be the right circumstances to trigger it. But see, I mean, it's kind of interesting. Maybe because he was a zombie at the time, maybe it does something to his brain. Maybe it is because once it's cured, it messes. Maybe things don't operate there. Because it seemed like that's so interesting that you would just leave his body somewhere. Liv could eat. That's a part of Liv's whole thing too. What's interesting too, really quickly, is the fact is that it came up as a conversation because apparently Blaine is using Donnie with this computer brain genius in his head to stalk Peyton, kind of check her emails. Oh, why is she with Ravi? Oh, this guy. And even had what's his new dude's name? The dude who cries all the time. And it's just kind of like, don't worry, you'll find love again. It's like, yeah, I found true love after, like, we've been together for 5 years. And then Donna was like, yeah, his wife is like built like Jessica Rabbit. So when she comes in, don't, because it's like he's the very jealous type. So that was kind of neat. But also he points out something that I'd remarked on that he hadn't remarked on at the time. It's like, Ravi, we saw him eating a brain tube, so he's a zombie. But how can he be with Peyton? So what is he then? So eventually that's going to come back around. And I'm curious to see what that will turn into. I mean, that will make, Ravi an abnormality amongst zombies and humans. And I'm curious, like, what's going to happen if, like, Blaine finds out about that information. I'm sure he could try and make a profit off of it in some shape or form. we'll see. But also an aspect of this episode I really like is the fact that Clive was up to some shady stuff. He brings in the sketch artist dude and the tech dude, and it's just like, okay, you got it ready? Okay, I'm like, what the hell are they doing? Lo and behold, playing freaking D&D. Like I said, I love the fact is that like ever since that came up last season, like Clive has been super into it. Even getting Robbie involved, and Robbie's like, yo, Major, can you pick something up for me? It's super important for a case. It turns out all of it was just like a little, I guess it was his figure that represents him in the game is all that was. I also love that Michelle comes in and they're kind of embarrassed for a moment, but she comes in, got her character sheet and everything, and they join her in with the game. She's having fun all around. I love the little moment she comes in. It's like, okay, the game's about to end. And she goes, actually, I sneak in and steal all the apples. And the tech dude was like, no, I buried mine. He's like, no, you didn't. He's like, no, you didn't hear me? Because from the very beginning, I was like, I hide all my treasures in the ground. It's like, no. And then you had the moment where Clive and Michelle kissed, which it's super complicated. Not like they wanted it to happen. Michelle already made it clear. It's like she didn't want to be in a relationship like that. Like she knows Clive's situation. But obviously him and Bazio are taking those steps. Because obviously the inspector in this episode kind of threw it out there too. It's like, oh yeah, like, oh, look at these couple. How could they be together, a zombie and a human? Because, you know, you can't do that. Also appreciate that Liv and Ravi were speaking French to him just... Because, I mean, did they not know it before? I think, did they learn enough French just to get pissy with him? I really liked that. At one point, it's just kind of telling him off a little bit, and then they, like, bump fists. I thought it was kind of neat. But, yeah, that's definitely going to complicate things. Because, obviously, Clive never wanted things to be like that. He knew it's a possibility. And, like I said, Michelle isn't really into that. But it's going to turn into that complication of maybe they just can't be together. They love each other. But, obviously, there's just one aspect of their relationship can never be there. But to be fair, there's also the aspect of the cure thing. So, that might be something that Clive might start investigating. And that might get across his mind about, you know, potentially... dealing with this whole Bazio situation and potentially getting her cured or not. I don't know. Like I said, it also comes down to each individual zombie. Some people might be all about getting cured, hence why we have all these rich people trying to pay like a crazy amount of money for at least one of those cures that Blaine has. Or, you know, there just might be people who are like, no, I like being a zombie. It's much better off being a zombie. I mean, what would happen to someone in... Because I forgot, like, has that come up before, like, someone who's been sick being cured? So, like, if Isabel could be turned into a zombie and then turned back into a human, would her disease appear? Because it kind of happens like that sometimes with vampirism, where it's like you were a vampire before and then you get cured. Like in Angel from the whole Buffy the Vampire Slayer universe. I think in that universe, the moment you turn back to being a human again for whatever circumstances, whatever illness you had as a vampire continues on, essentially, you know. So as you are a human, so it's just kind of interesting to wonder if that would ever work too, because I think that's another aspect we've never seen with zombieism in the show either. But maybe it has come up and I just don't remember. But nevertheless, like I said, overall a great episode. I'm very interested to see where any of this kind of takes us in the next episode, whether it be any whether anything will come about what I've kind of brought up when, you know, discussing this episode. But ultimately we'll have to wait and see. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.